Hello, my friends. Today is Good Friday. Good Friday is one of the most important days in our church year. Today, we remember when Jesus was arrested and crucified. We've learned a lot about Jesus together. We remember when he was born in the stable. We remember that he grew up to be an adult and then taught people about God's kingdom. We remember how he said, "I am the good shepherd, and I know my sheep by name, and I would lay down my life for them." Well, today we remember a very sad part of Jesus' story. We remember when he died. But my friends, this is not the end of Jesus' story. It's just the middle. This part of the story is sad, but it has a very happy ending. Can you remember? Easter. God raises Jesus back to life. I think that when we hear sad stories, or when we are doing things that are hard, it's best to do them together. So I've asked several of our church friends to help tell this story today. They are so glad to be with you.
Hello, girls and boys. I'm Miriam, one of your priests at Parish of the Epiphany. And I have a cup that will be part of a story that I read to you from the Gospel of Matthew. Listen. Now on the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus saying, "Where will you have us prepare for you to eat the Passover?" He said, "Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, 'The teacher says, my time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.' And the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared for the Passover meal. Now when it was evening, he sat at the table with the 12 disciples. And as they were eating, Jesus took bread, blessed it, and broke it. And he gave it to his friends and said, 'Take, eat. This is my body.' And then he took a cup. And when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, 'Drink of it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins.'" I wonder if these words are familiar to you. When we're together at church on Sundays, the priest who is celebrating says these very same words. When I am the celebrant, I take the big round host and I say, "Take, eat. This is my body." And then I pick up the silver chalice, which is a fancy cup, and I say, "Drink this, all of you, for this is my blood. Do this in remembrance of me." That's what we do every time we gather together at Epiphany. We remember everything that Jesus taught us and everything that Jesus did for us. We share the bread and we share the wine, the body and blood of Christ.
Hello, Dear young brothers and sisters in Christ, my name is Pam Chester, and I'm showing you a palm tree like the ones that grew in the gardens in Jerusalem in Jesus' time. I'm reading from the book of Mark. And they went to a place which was called the Garden of Gethsemane. And Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." And he took with him Peter and John and James and began to be greatly distressed and troubled. And he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch." And going a little farther, he fell on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, "Abba, Father, if all things are possible with thee, but remove this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will." Jesus was worried, so he prayed to God. What do you do when you have big feelings? Jesus prayed that God's will be done and not his own. I wonder if that was hard for him to pray.
Good afternoon, children. My name is Ellen Wilson, and I'm reading from the book of Mark. And they led Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests and the elders and the scribes were assembled. And Peter had followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest. And he was sitting with the guards and warming himself at the fire. And as Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the maids of the high priest came, and seeing Peter warming himself, she looked at him and said, "You also were with the Nazarene Jesus." But he denied it, saying, "I neither know nor understand what you mean." And he went out into the gateway. And the maid saw him and began again to say to the bystanders, "This man is one of them." But again he denied it. And after a little while, again, the bystanders said to Peter, "Certainly you are one of them, for you are a Galilean." But he began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, "I do not know this man of whom you speak." And immediately the cock crowed a second time. And Peter remembered how Jesus had said to him, "Before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." And he broke down and wept. So, children, after Easter, Jesus and Peter are reunited, and Jesus forgives Peter for leaving him. How happy do you think Peter was then?
Hello, my name is Susan, and I would like to read you something from the book of Matthew. While he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a great crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. At that hour, Jesus said to the crowds, "How have you come out as against a robber, with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day, I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But all this has taken place, that the scriptures might be fulfilled." Then all the disciples forsook him and fled. Then those who had seized Jesus led him to Caiaphas the high priest, where the scribes and the elders had gathered. When the people came to arrest Jesus, the disciples were scared and they ran, but Jesus did not run. Why do you think that was? Do you think that maybe he knew that God had a plan for him?
Hi, it's Corey. I'm reading to you from the book of John. Then Pilate took Jesus and scourged him, and the soldiers plaited a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and arrayed him in a purple robe. They came up to him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" and struck him with their hands. When the chief priests and the officers saw him, they cried out, "Crucify him! Crucify him!"
Hello, children. This is Bryn, and my object is a cross. I'm reading from the book of Luke. And when they came to the place which is called Calvary, or the skull, there they crucified him and the criminals, one on the right and one on the left. And Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." It was now about the 6th hour, and there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour, when the sun's light failed, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Then Jesus, crying with a loud voice, said, "Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit." And having said this, he breathed his last. I wonder, do you remember what comes next? This isn't the end, is it?
Hi, I'm Annie Bing. The object I have is linen used in burials, and I'm reading to you from the book of Matthew. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who was also a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it to be given to him, and Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen shroud and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn into the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the door of the tomb and departed. Joseph must have loved Jesus to give him his own tomb. Who remembers how long that great stone stays in the door of the tomb? Not very long, right? When Easter comes, the tomb will be empty.
Hi everyone, my name is Lindsay, and my object is a candle. This is a candle that my daughter Jane made when she was in communion enrichment at Parish of the Epiphany. Today I'm going to be reading from the book of Luke. But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, the women came to the tomb, taking the spices they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly 2 men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen." I wonder, what is the good news of Easter morning?
How good it is that we know the rest of the story. Jesus died, but 3 days later, God raised Jesus from the dead. That means God breathed life back into Jesus, and he was alive again. What we remember today is that God has always had a plan to keep us close to God. God sent Jesus to earth so we could see and know God better. And when God allowed Jesus to die on the cross and then raised him from the dead, God showed us that nothing can separate us from God. During these next 2 days before Easter, don't forget that we know what happens next. This weekend, thank God for this amazing love and the promise to always be together. And look toward the power of God. We will celebrate together on Easter.
Now I'd like for you to sing with me something that we've sung together in chapel, and I know you've sung with Corey. So sing along. Go now in peace, Go now in peace. May the love of God surround you. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the love of God surround you. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the love of God surround you. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the love of God surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. God's peace be with you now and always. Amen.